Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Linda Way, Western Center on Law and Poverty Senior Policy Advocate on Health. Thanks for joining us for our last Meet the Advocate of the Year. This is a special edition featuring all of Western Center policy advocates for a career retrospective conversation with Mike Herald, our fearless policy director, who after 19 years at Western Center and some 40 years in the field will be retiring this Friday. As you can see from the rotating graphic on your screen, Mike has led Western Center's policy team in securing significant legislative, budget, and administrative wins for low-income Californians. Today's conversation will dive into those accomplishments, lessons learned, challenges encountered, and what the future holds. Joining me today is Christopher Sanchez, policy advocate on the Public Benefits and Access to Justice team, Cynthia Castillo, policy advocate on housing, Tina Rosales, policy advocate on housing, Sandra Poole, our newest hire on the health team, and finally, our featured speaker, Mike Herald, the director of policy. We encourage you to drop in messages for Mike in the chat, and we'll try to get to any questions dropped if there is time. But we'll go ahead and dive in with Christopher asking the first policy question.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. And I just want to say it's been a pleasure to work alongside Mike as an employee of Western Center, an advocate here at Western Center. But when I first started out, he lended a hand and reached out to me when I first became an advocate. And so I just want to briefly just say thank you, Mike. But let's get into some serious questions. And before you become an advocate, you got to put in some work. And we've heard these stories about you working in the Central Coast and the salad bowl of the capital, the salad bowl of the world, Salinas. Can you give us some of the first lessons that you learned there as an advocate on the ground? And during your time there, what did you learn there? And what did you bring from those lessons to Sacramento?
Yeah, actually, I worked in Watsonville, and so Watsonville's like the poor cousin to Salinas. People in Salinas are all kind of snobbish toward Watsonville folks. Anyway, I was a community organizer. I was working for a church-based organizing project that it was part of the PICO network. Some of you may have heard of it, and I had been organizing for 6 years at that point. So I kind of had a pretty good sense about how to do things, or at least I thought so, right? And so when I got to Watsonville, now Watsonville, just remember, this is a very rural town. There's like 50,000 people. 30,000 of them were Latino. Many of them undocumented. And it was a city that, even though it was 60% Latino, we had no representation at all. They had no representation at all on the city council. All 7 seats of the council all came from one kind of, literally, I'm not making this up, like a 2-block area in the white area of Watsonville. So people were really left out. But it was really funny when I first got there, like the first thing I had to learn, and it was really confusing, is like, so they, going out organizing, you're knocking on doors, you're talking to people, and I started hearing like, oh, well, the Mexican folks in town would tell me like, oh, we don't want to be in a group with the Porchos. And then the Porchos would say, those Mexicans, they're really snobbish towards us. And it's like, what's going on? Aren't you guys all Mexicans? Like, well, why do I have to differentiate between the two? So there was these class differences that came out really clearly, and these differences between the way people saw themselves as being, I'm from Mexico, I immigrated here, as opposed to somebody who was born here. And it was like, it was a real eye-opener for me. Like I had to really kind of take that in and start to recognize these differences and be cognizant of them. And at the end of the day, I had to bring everybody together into common efforts. You couldn't organize only the Porchos or something. So, you had to, it was a real challenge for me when I first came. Watsonville was just an amazing experience. I spent 5 years there. We had We had the nation's longest cannery strike, over 18 months, thousands of people out of work, people losing their houses. I mean, it reminded me a little bit of COVID, but on a smaller scale. Not able to pay their utilities. We had a riot in the town when we were there that was initiated by outside agitators who were trying to like turn Watsonville into some kind of like social experiment by these communist groups. Again, I'm not making this up. It was a wild time. Cesar Chavez was coming through all the time. And even though Watsonville was one of the few towns that the UFW never really successfully organized. And then at the end, there was a lawsuit brought by MALDEF against the city of Watsonville for their at-large districting systems. And this was the first lawsuit in the West Coast against under the Voting Rights Act. And Joaquin Avila, who was the attorney for MALDEF and their general counsel, was the one who brought that suit. I got to work with Joaquin a lot during that time, and he won. And he won at the appellate level, and then the Supreme Court didn't hear the case. Joaquin became a very wealthy man because of this case. He got triple attorney fees. A dream come true for us lawyers, right? But the most important thing was that the city then had to get rid of the old at-large system. We had 7 districts established, and at the first election, we won. Our organizing committee won 4 seats, and we took over the council. And so literally, I mean, I woke up in the morning at my friend's house, Todd McFerrin, and we had no seats on the council. And that night I went to sleep in his house, and he was going to be the mayor-elect of the city of Watsonville. So it was really like, it's an experience that I really treasure. And I still have many, many friends down in the Watsonville area, and I stay in contact with them regularly.
Thanks for sharing, Mike, and moving from your beginning days at Watsonville to this Friday. Can you share a little bit about what your biggest win for Californians at Western Center? That's a tough one.
It's hard to say. There are many, but I think the one that probably stands out to me the most was getting, California was the last state in the country that didn't allow SSI recipients to get SNAP benefits. So 49 other states allowed it. We had always had a thing where we gave people an extra $10 a month in their SSI amount. And we said, that's good enough. They don't need those SNAP benefits. So this was a decision that was made like 40 years ago, and obviously had not stood the test of time. Those $10 have been completely, SNAP benefits are worth way, way more than those $10 were. But it was a really hard thing to get changed. And a big reason for that was because when we go to allowing SSI recipients to get SNAP, it also meant that some households where we had a mix of SSI recipients and CalWORKS recipients, those households, some of them were going to either lose benefits or get cut off of SNAP entirely. And so one of the things that the legal service programs told me when I first took this job is, yeah, we want to get rid of the so-called cash out policy, but we don't want to have anybody harmed. Like, we can't cut a deal in which we harm everybody. And so, there were, attempts by different groups over the years to try to move something forward, but it was always without taking care of everybody. And then, we just got this opportunity in 2017. One of my best friends, Kim McCoy-Wade, who currently works for Governor Newsom, was running the SNAP program for the state of California. And, we just drove a really hard bargain, and the Brown administration signed off on protecting everybody. And we got cash out ended. We got SNAP benefits for SSI recipients, and 650,000 blind, aged, and disabled persons in California got those benefits because of that. So that's something I'm really proud of, and it's something that's going to stand the test of time.
Hey, Mike, and everyone else. So Tina Rosales, she, her pronouns, and I am one of the newer policy advocates in that I was an attorney before becoming a policy advocate. And being an attorney, oftentimes I have very perfectionist types of mentalities, and I want to get everything done. And if I don't get it done the way I want it, then I consider it a disappointment. And one of the fantastic things about having Mike as a mentor during the past 2 years, especially during COVID, was that he kind of put things into perspective for me and said that all of the great work we do, even if it's not exactly what we want, is still great work and it's going to impact some people. So I wanted to just take a moment to pause and thank Mike for kind of bringing me down a level and having it more realistic. But with that, I do want to know, because we've had many successes and many disappointments, what is your biggest disappointment in the job?
I think well, there were many. I mean, I think it's important to say that you know, we don't just like throw a bill out on the desk and then the next, you know, we go through a couple of committees and then we get the governor and voila, all the problems are solved. In most cases, that's not how advocacy works. It usually takes many failed attempts. And so, you know, the hallmark of the Western Center is that we never give up and we just keep coming back and trying over and over and over again. I mean, I think I ran that bill to get rid of the drug felon food stamp CalWorks bar 12 times, 13 times before we finally got half of the policy done. That's Tina's point about, you know, sometimes you have to take the victories you can get, right? And you got to serve as many people as you can. And so, you know, even though we wanted to get rid of all of that damn rule, that felony drug rule, you know, we got a little more than half. And so we took it, right? But I think the biggest disappointment probably was how long it took us to get, and we still have not got back the SSI cuts that were taken by Governor Schwarzenegger back in 2008, 2009. We cut, you know, we cut the grant by $77 a month for people who have nothing else to live on, blind, aged, disabled, literally cannot work. They wouldn't get SSI if they could work. So that, you know, they're entirely reliant on the money we give them. And to go in front of committee year after year after year and, you know, and get literally nothing from 2009 all the way up to 2021 was a really painful thing to go through. And I said in committee many times where we brought hundreds of SSI recipients to the Capitol to the budget hearings, and they would get up and testify one after another. And I'd be sitting up there with Director Lightborn from CDSS, and we'd be looking under our breath, we'd be going, this is so painful to listen to and watch. It's just heart-wrenching. Like, I mean, it was like torture to sit up there and hear people's stories and how hard their lives were. And so I think that was always the thing that really was the biggest disappointment. And we still, to this day, as I retire, we still have not fully restored those cuts. It's a shame on the state of California. We saved in the neighborhood of $13 to $15 billion on the backs of SSI recipients. We ought to be ashamed of ourselves.
Well, thank you for that, Mike. Being the new kid on the block, I'm really disappointed that I'm not going to be able to work with you. But one thing is very apparent, and that your legacy is so strong. Your history, and I will be able to depend on that. And I just enjoyed all the stories and just of all your accomplishments. So I just want to congratulate you for that. In terms of a question though, is there a specific bill that you felt that just got away? What would that bill be?
Well, I have two, and one is from my time at Housing California. And so when I was an organizer, one of the tools that we used a lot was the Community Reinvestment Act to try to force banks to invest back into low-income neighborhoods in the communities that I worked in. And so when I got to Sacramento, I'd had a brief stint at the Department of Insurance when I was coming out of law school. And I was going around chirping to the directors and everything. Oh, we need a Community Reinvestment Act thing on insurance companies. So when I got to Housing California, I started talking about this as an idea. And believe me, Housing California really didn't care. You know, like it's like, what are you doing? But like, I wanted to get this done. And so, you know, we beat our head. We got, you know, I remember we had a Richard Polanco bill at one point and it got killed. Maybe we had a couple of them with Richard and it got killed. And then Fred Keeley took our bill over and we actually passed a CRA requirement on insurance companies who got it out of the Assembly Insurance Committee, which believe me was a massive accomplishment because every insurer in the country was trying to kill this bill. But then they got us in appropriations in a really brutal way and killed our bill. And then, you know, our effort, like we could just kind of see the writing on the wall. We were never going to get this. And then a few years later, I moved on. I went to work for Governor Davis. And so I never pursued that again. So that's one that I'm disappointed about. And then the other one is a more recent one, which is a bill I did for Western Center, AB 516 with Assemblymember David Chu a few years ago, which would have ended 3 ways that California cities tow people's vehicles for poverty reasons. So if you have 5 or more unpaid traffic tickets, you have unpaid car registrations out of date for more than 6 months, those kind of things can get your car towed away. And then when people get their car towed, they often can't get it back and they lose their biggest asset. So we ran a bill and we got it all the way to the Senate. We got it all the way through the Assembly. And we actually had a bunch of Republican support on the bill, and a bunch of them went up on it. And we got it all the way to the Senate Appropriations Committee, and the chair of the committee killed the bill on us. And so, you know, as Cynthia knows, we're trying to revive that bill next year, at least part of it. But that was really a disappointing thing because me and my colleague, Maya Ingram, who was at the ACLU at the time, she and I like went through several pairs of shoes trying to lobby that thing. And yeah, we just couldn't get it across the finish line.
Thanks, Mike. I've got the next question. And, you know, like we mentioned before, these things never die. We try and try again. So I'm really looking forward to working on that. My name is Cynthia Castillo. I'm a policy advocate on the housing team, usually working on land use policies, equitable development, and homelessness issues. And so excited and thrilled to celebrate Mike's illustrious career and be here with all the colleagues. So great to see you all. My question for you is, you know, you've been in the anti-poverty policy movement for a very long time now, and much has changed during that time. And you've worked with different governors and had, you know, different kinds of setbacks. And I'm curious, you know, with the history that you have, where do you see the anti-poverty policy movement going forward from where you've come from your viewpoint?
That's a really good question. And I would say, you know, but for Western Center, and maybe a few other advocates around, there really isn't much of an anti-poverty movement. When you look at other issue areas, environmental work, affordable housing, I mean, there are all kinds of groups around doing all sorts of different kinds of work, right? When you do lobbying around poverty issues, you know, it's Western Center, it's Kevin at CCWRO, our longtime colleague. There's Grace and Epic, you know, who are kind of new on the block. And, you know, and the food banks. And, you know, really, there's not much infrastructure in the anti-poverty world. And I think it's really kind of shameful, frankly, that over the last 30, 40 years, I think especially from the time when welfare reform happened, I feel like funders and policy folks have just kind of turned away from that policy work. I mean, so you see lots of people in the space of the earned income tax credit or the child tax credit. But, you know, most of the folks that we represent in the Capitol every day, they don't benefit from those programs because they can't work, or the circumstances of their lives make it impossible for them to work. So, I see all this money getting poured into all this advocacy around tax credits, and it benefits some of our clients. I'm not saying it doesn't, and it certainly benefits people who are near poor. But like, I really find that there's such a limited amount of infrastructure around anti-poverty work statewide. I really do think it's something that needs to be addressed. And really, we need more robust advocacy. We do all of this on a shoestring. We don't have a budget. We don't have any staff. I mean, we just literally try to cobble together the best that we can, the work, and try to fight like heck to get good things for our clients. I made this comment at my retirement party last week in Sacramento, and I'll give you a shorter version of it here. I also think that we spend way too much time working on small bills. And we spend time, and not so much, we don't do this really much, but other groups, you see them around, and they're always into these little turf warfare battles, over this, that, or the other. They're trying to get, people, somebody's trying to, the insurers are trying to get the docs, and the docs are trying to get the lawyers, and all this kind of penny ante stuff that really doesn't make any difference in the world. And I really do think that we need to rethink the way that we do our advocacy in a way where we're, intentionally committing our resources to big stuff and going after big things that make a really big difference. And so I think that's something that we need to think about. And I think, if the funders aren't going to come to us with the money that we need, then we need to take the resources that we have and create the kind of infrastructure and foundation that we need to do anti-poverty work better.
Thanks for that, Mike. I'll pass it to Tina.
Okay. I was going to wait till the end for this question, but I'm just going to do it now. Why not? So oftentimes we see superheroes like my boy Neymar, or in Marvel, Captain America, and these types of individuals. And superheroes, in the literal sense, are people with extraordinary powers that perform heroic actions. And we don't really think of our everyday colleagues as superheroes. Because you're not my boss anymore, I'm going to give you this compliment that I think you are a superhero in your own right, and that you use whatever, what the abilities that you have to perform actions that will impact people every day. And it is quite heroic. But along with us being superheroes in that sense, we also have people and organizations who are our arch nemesis. And I know for the housing space, we have some that I'm not going to mention. But I'm curious as to you, Mike, since you've been around in the Capitol and worked with a bunch of different organizations, taking the compliment that you're a superhero, what organization would be your arch nemesis?
And I just may or may not be watching my superhero Messi right now. I'm not saying I am. I'm just drawing that line to Neymar. So it's 2-0 Argentina, by the way, which I'm happy about. I've been thinking about this question, and there, it's really funny in the anti-poverty world, we don't have an enemy like, to name somebody, the California, the Apartment Owners Association or something. Or the Chamber of Commerce, somebody who's really out there trying to kill all the good progressive bills. So I'm going to say two things on this. One is, I think our actual enemy in poverty work is the Department of Finance. So, and I say that because I have a lot of friends at finance, and I have taken a lot of care over the years to build those relationships. And you don't hear me talking smack about DOF in public, and I'm not going to do it here either, because actually, if you get to know them and you work with them, you can get amazing things done. And so a lot of the work that we've done in the fines and fees space, for example, would not have been able to be done without help from the Department of Finance, and they were really critical. But they also can just be major obstacles. And if staff don't understand what our clients' lives are like, they often can be really hard to work with and roadblocks to the progress that we want to make. And they're you know, the first word that everyone at the Department of Finance learns on the first day of their job is no. And so you've got to like figure out how to get around the no, you know, because you know it's coming and they're going to say no, and then you just can't take no for an answer, right? So yeah, I think they're the natural enemy on poverty work because their job is to protect the state budget. But again, on an individual basis, as you get to know them as human beings and not as these kind of, you know, whatever they kind of get perceived at in the Capitol, you know, there are some really, really good people, and there are people with stories about who grew up on the same programs that we care about, and their parents are on those programs now. And I think when you can get into the level of those kind of relationships and really appeal to people at that level, you can really make progress. All right, and here's the other enemy, and this is thankfully long gone, but this was the bane of my existence for most of my career in Western Center and at Housing California. The 2/3 vote for the budget. The 2/3 vote for the budget meant that in a state which is overwhelmingly Democratic, the minority party, the Republican Party, had overwhelming power over the lives of Californians. So we couldn't get anything done in the budget to help poor people because the Republicans would never go along with it because we needed just a handful of their votes always in order to pass our budget. Hence, we'd be here like all year long, never able to pass a budget. I mean, this went on year after year after year. And then you would see all of the things that the Republicans would demand for just a paucity of votes to pass a budget that really didn't do much for our clients, but it did all this great stuff for all these big corporate players and people in the building industry. And I mean, I one time got a list of when Dennis Hollingsworth was the minority leader in the Senate. And somebody sent to me this list of things they want in the budget that Hollingsworth sent. It was like 25 items, and they weren't little small, like a swimming pool. It was big stuff. So when the voters got rid of that 2/3 vote, it totally changed the dynamic in California and at the state legislature. And guess what? We started winning right after that. So, you know, I don't know. I don't know if I gained 30 points of IQ that day or I got a major obstacle out of my way. And I think that's really what that was.
And I think to keep up the momentum around superheroes and what it looked like in tough times, you were actually an advocate during the governor's time as governor in California. And those times were very different than what we have right now. Those were different in economic times where we were facing a little bit more of a hardship. As you mentioned, the two parties actually had to negotiate with each other, and so everybody really mattered. So what was it like being an advocate here at Western Center with Governor Schwarzenegger in office, who didn't favor our policy areas?
It was a really, really difficult time. And I also lived through the Pete Wilson era. So I became an advocate in 93. And of course, in 94, he ran Prop 187 to bolster his gubernatorial chances and all the political fallout that came from that. And so, and in some ways, by the time, you know, I'd actually been working for Governor Davis. and when Governor Davis got recalled and Schwarzenegger won, I quit. And I came to work for Western Center, and I've been here ever since. I wasn't going to work for a Republican governor because I knew what it was going to be like, because I lived through the horrible Pete Wilson era. And of course, we still have the 2/3 vote for the budget. So the governor has all this power in the budget, and then we give all the power to the minority party. So, I mean, it was just like, you know, we're just getting killed all the time in the budget. And, you know, Schwarzenegger went after health and welfare programs with a vengeance. I mean, and it took us more than a decade to restore many of the cuts. And like I mentioned earlier, some of the cuts have still not been restored. The thing is, though, I think I had learned a lot having watched the Wilson years. And so, you know, we got we built a couple of different coalitions together for California's future, which was actually run by my friend Kim McCoy-Wade, where we brought together all the big lobbying groups in Sacramento. And the whole thing was to start to push back on the all cuts budget, because that's all we do. We weren't going to ever put any revenue in. We weren't going to ask rich people to give anything more. We were just going to take and take and take again from poor people. And that's what that coalition really did. And I think it kind of established, like, there has to be more than one path we can't have just an all cuts budget. That can't be the only path that we can pursue in Sacramento. And so I thought that was really instrumental, and we built that out. And then we also had our Health and Human Services Coalition. And, the governor was going after us. He was calling our clients waste, fraud, and abuse. I will never forget those words for the rest of my life. And it just infuriated me. And for a spell, I was getting a lot of press attention. And I'm going to say something rather coarse, but usually people in our work, we get in the media when something really shitty is happening to our clients. That's when we get attention, right? So something really bad. Our clients were getting the crap kicked out of them by Arnold Schwarzenegger. So, we were in the newspaper all the time. I was on TV a lot, out there just really challenging the government in really direct ways. And finally, we ended up doing, now we didn't, of course, organize civil disobedience. It just happened spontaneously at the corner of 11th and L Street. And we shut down the entire downtown grid with a bunch of people in wheelchairs. And everybody came out of the Capitol and we're watching this action happen. And the police completely overreacted, which made things even better. They tried to start arrest people in wheelchairs, and it was just like a fiasco. But you know what? It finally gave the Democrats some push. They said, if these people in wheelchairs can stand up and fight like this, then so can we. And right after that is when we finally won a tax increase from Arnold Schwarzenegger. So we didn't do an all cuts budget.
And then, just as a reminder, Mike, statute of limitations has probably gone out. So I'll pass this on to Cynthia.
Thanks. I love the ideas and conversation around civil disobedience. Makes me very excited. That's why we all work at Western Center, because we're super into that.
Civil disobedience is a crime, and it's a conspiracy. So we don't
There's a statute of
actually conduct
limitations.
civil disobedience. It's a spontaneous reaction.
There you go, spontaneous reaction.
We're lawyers here. We have to abide by
Well, you know your job well. And so my question for you, before Western Center, you were the executive director at Housing California. So a little bit more issue specific here. And that organization aims to address housing affordability and the homelessness crisis. What do you see as the biggest challenge in the housing and homelessness space now? And what can you share about your experience there and what has changed?
Homelessness. I think it's like the greatest tragedy of our time. At the risk of offending some of my dear friends in the affordable housing movement, I think one of, when I was at Housing California, we were a state that was just years, if not decades, ahead of the rest of the country. We had this massive infrastructure of affordable housing groups, and these weren't little small, we're building 10 units a year. No, these are people building hundreds of units a year, doing major multi-million-dollar deals. We were, this was an industry. And so our goals when I was at Housing California was to try to build as much housing as we could for our clients, for low-income folks. And, we did well. We got a huge amount of money from Governor Davis one year. We got $575 million. And we were just in awe. It's oh my God, that's so much money. And then I went to work for the governor at Department of Housing right after that. And we got a $2.1 billion housing bond passed. But in retrospect, probably not the right strategy. Probably in retrospect, what we should have been doing all along was building out a rental assistance program for low-income Californians. Much of the housing that we built during those eras still weren't affordable to our CalWorks clients or people on SSI. And so, I look back at that time and I think that the failure by the state to address the rental assistance needs of low-income Californians has been a historical mistake. And it's born out of cheapness. We just don't want to spend the money. And I've had many conversations with different people at Department of Finance over the years. And really, that's what it all comes down to. They know it's going to be an expensive long-term obligation, and they don't want an expensive long-term obligation. So I think in retrospect, that's one of the things I've taken out of that time, was that we were too focused on development and not focused enough on the needs of really poor folks.
That's really helpful. And I think an ongoing crisis that really appreciate learning from you and sharing that experience with us. I can pass it to Sandra for the next question.
Hi there. So Mike, as some of us seek to continue in your advocacy footsteps, of course, we'll never fill your shoes. What advice would you give newer advocates, or stated otherwise, what do you know now that you wish you knew at the start of your career?
Gosh, I don't know. Everything probably. That's really hard to say, because I think so much of my career has been kind of a set of building blocks that I can just kind of step up off of. I don't think I would have been as good a lobbyist if I hadn't been an organizer beforehand. And the experience of walking in neighborhoods by yourself, going to people's doors who you had never met in your life, knocking on their door and having a conversation with them where you can build some trust enough that they will actually show up at a meeting that you're pulling together in the community. Organizing is really hard, but it gave me these really great skills. And I really knew, like, I knew how to communicate to people. I knew how to listen to people and hear what they were saying and be able to bring people together around the things that they were saying. And so I didn't have that when I started out in my career, but man, I got it fast. Like, that's what organizing is about. Like, they literally would take you to a map of the city when I first started, and they would say, do you want to go to the Polish neighborhood? You want the Italian neighborhood? You want the Black neighborhood? And I always took the Black neighborhood, but that's what it was like. And they say, okay, go out and knock on doors and come back when you've got an issue. And so, like, I might not be in the office for a couple of days. I'm just down in the neighborhood, knocking on doors, talking to people, trying to get a feel for the place, trying to get the vibe, right? And so when I came to Sacramento, and I had done that for 11 years as an organizer and done some pretty good work as an organizer, lobbying wasn't that challenging to me. I mean, it was hard to do because it's, you got all these members you got to convince and all that. But in terms of like pulling things together, seeing how you could organize people, that was a piece of cake. I've been doing that, like, much harder doing it out in the streets than it is up here, where everybody understands their self-interest, or they wouldn't be working here. So I really feel like those are the things that, and I would, say to other people too, like, getting that kind of community-based experience where you really have to kind of build something out of nothing is really what's going to make you successful up here.
Thank you for those pearls of wisdom. We'll hand it over to Linda.
Thanks, Sandra. And I have the pleasure of asking one of the last questions from the staff before we turn to the Q&A that I see already in the chat box. And something that's really come out in this conversation, as well as my work with you, is the joy that you have for this work. We know that advocacy can be challenging and inherently focused on conflict. But what's a favorite or fond memory you have of having fun while doing the work?
Well, yeah, I mean, I start from this place where it's a privilege to do what we do, and the opportunity, or, you know, I'm getting paid, let's put it this way, I'm getting paid to do the things that I really care about and that impact people who really need help, right? And so, like, when you start from that perspective, like you know, I just feel I'm so lucky, and so, like, I really try to bring that into my work all the time. I try to be, you know, I'm not faking it. It's just kind of who I am, I think. But I really don't, like, I know I don't see, like, you know, when a bad thing happens in the Capitol or something, or we lose a bill or something, you know, like, yeah, I'm bummed out a little bit, and I'm maybe pissed off at somebody, but I don't really I don't internalize that. I just come right back, and I'm going to go after you, and I'm going to figure out how to beat them. So, like, I just take a lot of joy. I try to really bring that into the work a lot. I don't know, you know, one of the great things about this job is you get to meet just all these amazing people, and you get really close to people. And in my budget work in particular, there's such a small group of us that have worked on CalWORKs and SSI issues over the years. I mean, I mentioned this at my retirement party. It was like me, Nicole Vasquez, Frank Mecca, and Jess Bartholow. The four of us, like, we're just kind of pillars that work together for years and years and years on this stuff. And like I said, we don't have any organizing groups. We don't have any money. I mean, we're just doing it because we have to win. But, you know, we used to, like, I remember many times Frank and I would be sitting in the budget hearings, and they're long, tedious affairs. They're going 5, 6, 7 hours, you know, and Nicole would be up on the dais, and somebody would say something really dumb up on the dais, you know, and so we'd be texting with Nicole and saying smart ass things about whatever that person had said that was so dumb. And you could see Nicole go, trying not to laugh up on the dice. And she'd text me back, don't make me laugh. Don't make me laugh. And I'm up here, you know, like, so, I mean, it's moments like that, you know, were really always fun for us. And it was that personal relationship and just kind of that inside knowledge, like, you know, like, oh, that what they're saying here is, like, not true or not right. And you can kind of make fun of them. So having a sense of humor in this business is really, really important.
Our job is very fun and very exciting. And when we're on, we're like 100% on. And when we have breaks, we also get really fantastic breaks. So it is probably one of the, other than doing UD work, which was really fun, this is probably one of the, and working at Coldstone, because I worked at Coldstone and that was probably the funnest job. This would probably, like, take the cake as one of the funnest jobs in the relationships that we build. So continue with that, like, excited energy. And this is something that we've talked about as a team a whole lot with your transition. But what is the one thing that you're excited about us carrying on? So that could be something that you started at Western Center, or basically anything that you want us as your, I guess, your legacy to carry on.
The passion and the quality that we bring to our work. And you know, we just have a fire in the belly that, you know, if you don't have it in this job, you're not in the right job. If you don't really want to do this, and you don't bring that energy when you go into an office and you're talking to a staff or a member, or you're talking to somebody at the administration, you just got to have that passion and be able to bring it home, like what our clients' lives are really like and why they need to make changes. So, like, I think that's really important. And then, but the other thing too is that we have established ourselves as part of the government. We are seen as essential insiders for evaluating people's proposals, like, you know, because some people run in the building, oh, I got to get this done. But, you know, when we hear the idea and we listen to them talk it through, it's like, that's not really going to work, or it's not really going to do what you think it's going to do. And so I think, you know, that piece of the quality that we provide, the integrity that we bring, maintaining that reputation that Western Center has for excellence in our policy work, like really knowing our stuff very well. That is like other groups would kill to get our reputation and to have that reputation, and it's hard earned, and very few people get to that level. And so as you guys progress, as I know you will, I think maintaining that kind of relationship and reputation within the Capitol is the single most important thing we do. And by the way, it's 3-0 Argentina now. I didn't see the third goal. I have no idea what happened.
I think we're all just taking a moment to process the fact that you're actually going to be gone now after almost 20 years of the work and mentoring so many folks. But Linda, did you want to jump in, or anyone else, for any last minute questions? We still have your cell phone number, so I'm sure you can't block us just yet, and we'll still hit you up.
And some of you know where I live, so.
Mike, I'll also uplift. There was a comment in the chat from the audience. I don't have a question, but an observation in response to the question about Mike's biggest win. My answer is the extent to which he established credibility with all sides. Achieving this and sustaining it was a major win for Mike in Western Center. So someone observing you, connecting and making those connections, which I can attest to as a staff and person that been in the building and seen Mike work, he definitely does that. He reaches out to all sides and makes those connections.
Never know who your friends are going to be.
Yeah, there is another question that just came in. I'll just mention it while I'm off mute. Will Mike still write his baseball reports?
Now we're getting down to the important stuff here, I see. You know, I was going to wear my Giants hat today. I forgot.
No, it's just not a good team to wear right now. So,
well, I got the orange and black on, though, if you notice. So, yeah, probably. I think so. Yeah, because I'm probably going to need something to do. There might actually be some actual facts in it next time, as opposed to what I usually publish. You know, I've written many Happy House Heroes forecasts sitting in budget committees waiting for my issue to come up. So they're not exactly well researched. So yeah, I think I'll probably continue to do that. And yeah, so I think people can still count on Happy House Heroes forecasts. You gotta be a character in this life, you know.
and just to note that the Western Center shirts are baseball jerseys, and there are baseball shirts, and they're blue, Dodger blue, and Mike is proudly going to wear it during baseball season.
Well, as long as I have a Giant shirt over it, yeah.
That's not possible.
As a San Franciscan, I don't condone that. Being that out there with the blue, but that's our color, so it is what it is. If y'all can't tell right now, we have a very friendly rivalry going on in our office.
All in good fun.
Well, I'll just jump in now and say thanks for a great conversation, team, and thanks to the Western Center broader community for joining us. Mike, well done. Well done. Words can't express how grateful we are for all that you've done for almost 2 decades at Western Center. And how proud we are of you and all you've accomplished and the way you've blazed trails and just put your whole heart and soul into the work that you do on a daily basis. You are a gem and somebody who we will always celebrate. And I will say that we do have Mike through the end of the year, not just through this Friday. Thank you very much. So, and he's right, we do have that cell phone number and all other ways to contact you. And you are going to be a trusted member of our advisory team and just helping us think through issues as things come to mind that you want us to know and consider. We're always going to be, you're always going to be part of our extended family. And I will just say that, you know, as we take the baton from you, as you pass it to us, we promise to run on and get more and more victories for the communities that we serve and the communities that we love. And we're going to make you proud. We know it. And just want you to know how much we just celebrate you and thank you, and just give you honor for all of the great work that you've done during your career. Couldn't be prouder of you, man. And just sending out heartfelt thank you, and just rejoicing with you over all that you've done. The battle is a tough one, but we're going to keep winning battles, and we're going to keep doing the work that you have dedicated your life to. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us. If there are any final questions any of the staff members have thought of, or anyone else that at this point, we want to make space for that. But if not, we'll give you a few minutes back before your next appointment at 1 o'clock, and just say thank you, Mike. We honor you, and we will celebrate your work and legacy always.
It has been an honor.
And Justice KBJ and MVP Harris are proud of you too. That's why they're up on my background. So I intentionally, you guys know I use this background often, but I intentionally kept them up because you know, there's so many people you've impacted and influenced along your career journey, and I think they represent the level of pride we have in all of the folks that are on our team trying to make a better world and better life for those who have been historically oppressed. So thank you, everybody, for joining us.
I like that picture, Chris.
Oh, Chris has got a good one. Ooh,
Where did that picture come from?
This is from back when I was like first starting out as an advocate. Mark, who's next to Mike, he posted this up on Mike's pinboard. And this is like at one of the Dream Alliance lobby days or something.
God darn, look, I'm the handsome devil. Look at that.
Still handsome, and not at all looking like you're near retirement age, but we know you are, but you've aged extremely well, Mike.
It's all those oranges.
Yes. Thank you all. Proud of you, team. Great job having this final conversation with Mike. And again, thanks to everybody for joining us. We really appreciate you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, all.